The final countdown in OWCS Asia has begun. The last tournament before we decide which teams represent this region in the OWCS finals at DreamHack Sweden. Time to find out who's ready for the lights when they're at their brightest. 8 teams across 3 regions all go head-to-head in a double elimination bracket, but only 2 will have the pleasure of going to Sweden. Who punches their ticket to this thing? Let's talk about that. From September 27th through October 5th, everyone's gone through the gauntlet. And honestly, right now, things are about as wide open as they've ever been, thanks to Juno significantly shaking up the meta. You gotta learn this new hero, all while adapting to a very different playstyle compared to much of what we've seen in Asia thus far. And I'd say the seeding, as well as the general teams who made it here, are a good indicator of just how crazy that's been. Let's quickly evaluate all 8 teams and their journeys to get here, starting with the Korean teams, the obvious favorites, the only ones you can really count on to make it out of this bracket. And surprisingly, getting first place in Korea was Team Falcons. The team that was written off, that looked dead according to many, are now all of a sudden at the top of their game. Just a couple of weeks ago, they looked completely and utterly boomed, getting destroyed by all of the other top competitors. But then, all of a sudden, with Juno being involved and with the Korea tournament rolling around, they flipped the script. They stopped messing around with Happy, they were able to get Hanbin on the Diva and the Ramatra, and they've just been looking like a much better team as a result. Proper and Stalker have been doing their thing, looking like the flex gods, and it seems like everybody's once again in their realm of comfort. Just compared to a couple of weeks ago, it feels like I am watching a completely different roster. They're once again full of life, in their own lane, doing their own thing, adjusting to this meta faster than a lot of their other opponents could. Double flex DPS being so prevalent has been huge for them. The less hit scan, the better off these guys seem to be. And the same can be said for having less Smurf and a lot more of Hanbin. Right now, this team is playing exactly how they need to. They're very momentum-based, they're confident when they're winning, they look horrible when they're losing. This is the moment for them to capitalize and just ride this momentum straight into DreamHack Sweden. I mean, they absolutely decimated the competition in this tournament, convincingly beating Crazy Raccoon and beating Zeta the way they did in the grand finals afterwards. Falcons look like a serious monster. They're playing up to their potential right when they needed to the most, and I'm wondering if this is finally the moment where they look like the #1 team that a lot of people projected them to be a handful of months ago. It's uncertain if they can maintain that consistency, but one thing's for certain. Right now, with how they've played recently, they are very clearly the best team in this tournament. They are the ones to beat. But then again, a certain team called Crazy Raccoon usually has something to say about it whenever we have any sort of ounce of confidence in this Falcons team. They're still right here, and they're looking to get some revenge. Genuinely, they looked a bit shaky to end the split. They almost lost that game to Zeta after going undefeated for a super long time, and from there things continued to spiral. The way they'd lose to Falcons and having to settle for top 3 instead of even making it to the finals, not the best look for them. It seems like they're still acclimating to this new meta. I won't lie, having Shu not being able to go on to his signature picks has certainly hurt them. That whole Juno Brig setup that seems to be popular isn't the greatest composition for this team in particular, and they're going to have to find a way to adjust. Alongside a guy like Lip, who yes, is more than just a Sombra hit scan 2 trick, he has shown that throughout the years, but even he is having to flex onto things he's maybe not as comfortable on, like with the Mei for example. Hence again, this whole idea of double flex DPS becoming so prevalent, with hit scan being on the back foot, with this fast-paced meta, and hit scan being oppressed the way it is. Although now, maybe things could be better for Crazy Raccoon, because if hitscan really isn't going to be all that strong, maybe they could bring in the new acquisition Knife, who's a free agent, who they brought in to maybe fix that flex DPS situation. If you're going for the double, maybe put him and Heesang in, and the results could be better depending on the situation. Now, I'm sure Lip's still going to get a lot of playtime and that won't change, but something to monitor that could make or break this roster. Not gonna lie, this is the most worried I've been about this team since the beginning of OWCS. Genuinely, they're giving off 2022 Gladiators playoff vibes. Remember the last time a new support hero came out and Shu had to adjust to things that are maybe a bit out of his comfort zone? it was a disaster for the Glads that year, and I'm kinda scared we're treading towards the same water. Not to mention, this team's been dominant the whole year, it's been a long season, you never know what could happen with sandbagging allegations as well. And even if you don't buy into those things, it is super clear that the gap has closed significantly between them and some of the other top contenders, and if they want to reopen it, they've got to play much, much better. But you know, for once, it may not just be Crazy Raccoon and Falcons at the top, because Zeta Division are looking to make some strides, and this just might be the chance for them to open things up completely. With the whole meta shift happening, maybe they can play better than everybody else down the stretch and punch their tickets to a main event like this after missing Dallas the way they did. Things started off shaky for them, they showed some major inconsistencies during the group stage, but when it mattered, they were finally able to make a finals, something they have not done up until this point. They didn't look great, Falcons beat them convincingly, but that's still a great step in the right direction. And on top of it all, they may get some needed extra life with this squad, some extra energy if you will, with the recent acquisition of Pelican. That's right, the legend himself is back, and he is ready to make a playoff run. Alfie and Flora are a fantastic DPS duo, but with Mei being pretty good right now, and with Flex DPS being so prevalent, this could be a major opportunity for Pelican to shine and elevate this team to an even higher level. Yes, the whole Fearless situation the last time feels kind of similar, and it didn't go so great, but Pelican-led teams have a tendency to finish pretty high in big games, so I would not be surprised if they make some major magic happen. This Zeta Division team has constantly been written off. They've constantly fallen short of their goals. But now, the stars may just be aligning perfectly for them to flip the script and be that team that causes a major upset on the timeline. Do not mess with these guys. They are dangerous. And finally out of Korea was Pokerface. I was really hoping this team could make top 4. They've been really fun to watch. It's been a very optimistic showcase from them, and they were able to reach their goals. It had to come through the wild card, but hey, they made it here, and that's pretty sick. And of course, I mentioned this a lot, but when you're a team that's an underdog, that's not facing that much pressure, sometimes that can actually go towards your favor. A team like Falcons, Crazy Raccoon, even Zeta Division, their expectations are significantly higher, and that can lead to slip-ups where a team like this that's hungry to prove themselves can take advantage. Now, there's one issue, though, that makes me genuinely very concerned about this team's ability to perform, and that's, again, this whole idea of the meta shaping up way differently compared to like a month ago. They relied heavily on the chaos, following up on dives, and Belosria's Wrecking Ball being a menace to society, even full holding some top-tier teams. That's just not as much of a viable strategy now, with how important it is to play Brawl, to be quick, to lock in the Ramatra. Doesn't really suit Belosria's playstyle in my opinion. Now, things look a bit better when he goes on to Queen, but she's only going to be viable in certain scenarios. Can the rest of the team make up for the gap? Can they get away with not being able to play as much hit scan with Proud? I'm not too sure. I don't know how I feel about this team confidence-wise. Honestly, it's more of a just we're happy to be here type of team, I feel. Maybe they could make one upset happen if they're lucky, but they're not getting any further than that. They are just not good enough as they are now. As much as I love this team, as much as I want them to win, we've got to be realistic here. Now, the Korea teams are the main stars of the show, but I definitely want to pay my respects to Japan and Pacific respectively, because they did have some pretty awesome matches and some fun showcases in the regions of their own, and they're still here and deserve some kind of spotlight. And I want to start things off with Japan because we have 2 new challengers entering the ring. Gone is Vero and Insomnia, who have been so dominant in Japan. They both flopped when it mattered the most. And in their place, we'll see Lazuli and Yum Gaming. And I'm hoping that at least one of these two can put up a better impact than we saw from the other teams in Japan during Stage 1 in this type of tournament bracket, where they were unable to even take a single map, clearly being dominated by the likes of Korea and Pacific, and showing they still have a long way to go before they are truly a relevant region. Could either of these new teams make up for the difference? I don't know about that, but I'm looking forward to watching them play, specifically Lazuli, as this team was kind of a miracle runner of sorts during Japan's tournament. They actually won the entire thing. They got first place, despite being the 4 seed heading into this thing after the groups. They went 5-2, just made the cutoff, but they turned it up to a different level with an upset against Insomnia, and then a dominant win in the grand finals. And what I find so interesting about this team is that they have one specific player on here who I haven't seen around the scene in years. And some of you will probably see it right away, maybe some of you won't, but for any people who watched Overwatch League back in 2020, you'll probably recognize the name Shui on this team, the former flex DPS of the Korean London Spitfire in 2020. What a throwback. This guy is back competing in Overwatch after temporarily retiring, and it seems like he's being a flex on this team. Instead of playing DPS, he was actually jumping into that Juno role, which is so cool. Just a random connection like that here in Japan. Now, unfortunately, knowing the overall strength of their roster, it's going to be a real challenge to even beat the Pacific teams, but knowing the talent with Shui and with Hidden as well, maybe they can make some magic happen, or at bare minimum, look more competitive than what we saw Varel and Insomnia do one stage prior. Although some may argue, despite them losing in the finals, that Nyum Gaming may be the more suitable team to look competitive out of Japan, as they pulled off arguably the bigger upset in that tournament by defeating Varel, who has just been having an absolute chokehold over Japan up until this point. They beat the first place finishers from last stage, the team that has had an iron fist over Japan for basically the entire season. They stunned them. With that type of potential, maybe they could do at least some damage against a Pacific team. It'll be a challenge even for them as well, but their roster strength overall, you may argue, is a little bit better than Lazuli's, just because they have Daisy, who was a former member of one of the OG Vesta crews that was actually pretty reliable. You've got a couple of Korean players in the mix as well. It's not a bad team at all. I'm hoping that they can do some kind of damage, them or Lazuli. It's going to take a miracle, but we can pray. And then in Pacific, it was the Bleed Esports 99 Divine show. Although we were very close to seeing Full House make it to top 2, which would have been sick, because who are yous on that team? Who are you once again being relevant in a playoff scenario would have been hilarious. But I digress. We got Bleed and 99 Divine, who were the clear favorites to make it out of Pacific. And it was Bleed who would come home with first place, avenging their Stage 1 finals loss that we saw them take at the hands of Honeypot. And it's impressive because this team once again showed some great perseverance. They had to fight through the lower bracket to go back, get that salty run back, and beat 99 Divine in convincing fashion. And what's great is it's basically the same team that you witnessed in Esports World Cup, as well as the Stage 1 Asia tournament where they were taking maps off of Zeta Division and stuff. It's that same team. The core is a bit different, but they've maintained. They still look as confident as ever. And I find that impressive because they're without Clear, who's obviously on Nightmare now, who is a damn good tank player. I'm loving that this team was able to adjust and still play at such a high level. They've still got all of their star players. They even added Maka on there because why not? They're a well-oiled machine, and with the confidence they play in, that never back down attitude, maybe they could randomly take some maps off of some Korean teams yet again. I would not be surprised. It really depends how this bracket falls. If they get the right opponent, maybe they make some magic happen. I don't know if they'd necessarily make it far into this thing, but if there's one thing I've learned based off of Esports World Cup, as well as Stage 1 of Asia, it's that you cannot underestimate Pacific. They're actually a much better region than some people give them credit for. And this Bleed Esports squad is the perfect example of it. They are the outlier. They're the ones that make you actually have to take Pacific seriously. They're an awesome team, and I just can't wait to watch them play again, because they may be one of the only entertaining teams in this tournament outside of the obvious Korean powerhouses. As for 99 Divine, on paper, not as confident in their roster compared to Bleed, obviously not as proven either, But if Bleed is as relevant as they are and they can make upsets happen, then 99 Divine could be capable of the same thing. After all, they beat them in the upper bracket before losing to them in the grand finals later on. Clearly, the potential is there. Now, unfortunately, it's not that same team that we saw during Esports World Cup that was able to take Twisted Minds to like a map 5 or whatever, but they still got a couple of those same guys. Color Hex is still here, Opener is here, they're still being coached by Unter, and I mean, come on, they have a guy named Meme Machine at support. How could you not cheer these guys on with that type of guy on their team? But in all seriousness, bare minimum, they may be able to prevail over the Japanese teams and get out of the lower bracket round 1. They have the coaching, they're going to have the discipline, that staff knows what they're doing and it should bode well for their players. And I mean, Opener, he's played with some good consistency throughout the last couple of years, and Color Hex has been playing some of the best Overwatch I've ever seen from him since Esports World Cup, and that just might be enough for them to be more than just the first round exit type of team. But yeah, those are your 8 teams participating, my feelings on them, and generally how strong they are on paper heading into this tournament and what their outlooks are like. When it comes to my predictions for this bracket, I'm going to keep things by the book. I'm going with the simple and boring answer in this scenario. For this bracket, I'm going with Crazy Raccoon as the winner. That may seem a little ridiculous just knowing how badly they got beaten by Falcons, but I've learned over the last couple of months that Crazy Raccoon usually don't take these things to heart. They have just been the best team through and through this season, and I don't think they're going to go down as these random sandbaggers. I don't think it's going to be the same situation as the 2022 Gladiators. There's too much potential. There's too much talent. They've played with so much consistency this year. There's no way they don't figure this thing out. Even if they aren't totally comfortable, they're going to put out a much better product than what we saw in the Korea tournament. You can take that to the bank. There is no shot this team is going to flop after how far they've come. This is the big moment for them. This is the thing they've been waiting for. This team loves to win, and their journey is certainly not going to end here. As they've done all season after a loss, I'm sure they'll find a way to adjust. Coach Moon, as much as I rag on the guy for the Valiant days and making me suffer, he is arguably the best coach of all time, and I think he's going to coach those guys well enough to make up for those mistakes, and they're going to be more disciplined. Lip, he's hungry to win after failures the last couple of years. Shu has been desperate to win a championship in his professional career, and those young guys I think are going to push it to another level as well. This will not be like some of the other dominant powerhouses that flop in the final hour. This team is usually so good after a loss. And they didn't exactly have to play all that hard to make it here. And I think now that they know the stakes are at their highest, they'll lock the hell in. They've always been clutch, and I foresee them doing it again, even if this meta maybe isn't perfect for them. And at the end of the day, history always seems to repeat itself with this Crazy Raccoon team, and even Falcons as well. Crazy Raccoon, the last time they lost to Falcons, went on a dominant run after it was all said and done. They were able to come back, they clapped back in Asia, they beat them easily. Esports World Cup, beat them there as well. It always seems to go wrong for Falcons after they have some kind of life. That's when execution comes into play, and Crazy Raccoon have usually been the better team in that aspect. Falcons, unfortunately, have faced some major consistencies this year. I've trusted them a bunch of times, and usually it has done a lot more harm than good. I've learned my lesson. I'm not trusting them anymore in these big situations. When it truly matters, the team to beat is usually Crazy Raccoon, and I'ma stick with that. I think Crazy Raccoon have the best combination of consistency, that desire to win, and the talent to prevail. As for the rest of the bracket, I feel like it's rather standard. Call me a hater if you want, but I'm not going to trust in Japan to play super well. I think maybe they could take some maps off of Pacific, but they've shown time and time again that they just aren't ready to close that gap just yet. They're a fun, new, and exciting region, but they have a long ways to go before they catch up to the actual top-level players in the entire world. And I've learned not to underestimate Pacific, so I'm not going to do it this time. I think that both 99 Divine and Bleed Esports are going to win their first round matchups. Now, unfortunately, when it's all said and done, I think it will just be the 4 Korean teams that end up being top 4 in this thing. But I'm a little excited to watch Bleed potentially play Zeta Division again. That would be super hype. And I guess you never know what could happen with Pokerface. I mean, they're a good team, but maybe one of these specific teams could give them a serious run for their money just because of where they sit in the current meta. I think it'll be something like Falcons and Crazy Raccoon in the upper bracket finals, then probably Falcons lose, but maybe Crazy Raccoon lose there. But then in the grand finals, I think Crazy Raccoon take first place, regardless of what the other outcomes are in the previous rounds. And I think Zeta's probably going to get into that number 3 spot, and they'll flop again as they usually do. They've just made a habit of doing that. Like, I want to trust them to maybe take out Crazy Raccoon because of where things set currently with what's being played out there. It may even favor Zeta a bit more right now. They may be a bit more confident as a team, and you never know how Pelican could significantly change things up if he gets playtime, but I just don't think it will be enough. Again, history tells me this team's going to find a way to choke. Violet's going to do something silly. They're going to misplace an ultimate. They're going to have a horrible ultimate economy. They're going to do something stupid as they usually do. It's just been unavoidable for them in every single tournament so far, and God help me, it's probably happening again. But yeah, that basically sums up what this tournament's looking like, the landscape, and my general feelings on it. Honestly, right now, I don't have all that much confidence in any of my picks. This could go any way. I mean, we could see either Crazy Raccoon or Falcons flop. It wouldn't be all that surprising. Crazy Raccoon for the meta thing, Falcons for their choking history. Maybe Zeta Division can step in and get top 2 and sneak into Sweden. I wouldn't be shocked. I'm not going to do it personally. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I think it will happen. But damn, you never know right now. Things are a wide open book. The gap has never been this close before in Korea, in my opinion, and I'm excited to see how things go. With that said, though, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think of the OWCS Stage 2 Asia tournament down in the comments below and who you think is winning. Make sure to like the video and subscribe as well if you're new to my content and you want to see more of it, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.